Hey, it is your buddy, Peace and Harmony with you here today. Much love going out to all the beautiful, empowered harmonizers. We are zooming in and focusing in a little bit more in depth on, well, what you might consider not such a fun topic, or you might consider it a very fascinating topic, and that is to understand sort of the power vacuum, the power magnetism, the power draw, where all things sort of come together in like a vortex, if you will, for the female psychopath. This might seem harsh, this might seem rough, this might seem heavy. Whatever it is, you must understand that someone who is a female psychopath is operating at a different level of consciousness, not just that of higher intelligence, it's that of manipulation. They're operating at a different level of vision, how they see things, how they see the world, how they get what they want. They learn very early on, if I do this, I get this. If I do this, so very manipulative, cunning, and sly from the beginning. Why is this such a focus? Why is this such a prevalent core of their psychology and their personality and the energy and influence that they exude? Oftentimes it's felt as an intangible. I can't escape this. This is, very difficult to resist. There feels to be an impenetrable barrier. Well, then they overtake you. It becomes an energetic field, what I might call a quantum field. But when we talk about this, we're talking about a whole different character than your typical boss female, a alpha female, high achiever, over-accomplisher. You have a lot of very driven and oftentimes invisibly remarkable and magnificent females. Okay, that of course you've got the whole debate about male versus female, blah 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 blah. We are talking, about really sort of a controlling force, a magnetic force, sort of an inescapable vacuum. What the viewer's question is to discuss the power vacuum in this type of female. And what is going on? Why is there this sort of inescapable draw? Why does it feel that you can't extricate or remove yourself? Take your eyes off, take your heart off, take your sort of, you get, a lot of people have anxiety, they have shakiness, they have, it's different than just like being nervous. Oftentimes it's like a blood sugar situation where they feel panicky. They feel ill or unable to think clearly. The mental fog, fear, obligation, and guilt. Fear, mental fog, standing for fear, obligation, and guilt. So oftentimes in the male counterpart who is, or we also have, a lot of viewers who have these as siblings. And there is, or maybe in the workplace where there is this sort of vacuous or abysmal, abyss-like energy, where they really take the energy from the room. They drown people out. People feel powerless, but they're only rewarded if they are compliant with the vision or outlook of this female. In other words, it becomes a very much of a matriarchy situation. And especially for some men, meaning where men are running things, that's called a patriarchal system. You might think of like your priest, patriarch is the male, and you don't, and then there maybe were other societies, for example, like the Native American females, that was a matriarchal society. So the females were like the head of the tribe. They're the ones who ran the show. You had your medicine men, you had your chiefs and such, but it was a matriarchal society. So you can understand, how, especially now, in such a pivotal age where we are, with things as they are, shifting and changing on the daily, with a pandemic, with the whole uprising, having equality, understanding what is sick in a society, no longer embracing what is sick in a society, evaluating what is sick in a society. I mean, this is up my backyard, this is my alley, this is my fabric, this is what I've been interested in. This is just what I have found myself in. I mean, I arrived here like out of an egg on the ground. I mean, this is just, I knew that was going to happen. My little drum that I have brought on, which I will bring back. I wanted to bring this into the picture. This is like such a cool Native American, and it must be our Native American brothers. Were we just talking about our Native Americans and then this just moved? Okay, well, let's just call it as a message if we're still tuning in. It was a matriarchal society, and so we're talking really about who is the head chief, the head honcho, the big cheese, the top gun, whatever you want to call it. So with this, and we talk about a power vacuum and how energy sort of gets focused, it's oftentimes there is a transference of this energy, meaning it's a focal point, for all sorts of people, a focal point. There's then has transference, which is a psychological concept. Sorry if this isn't super entertaining, but I mean, we're in a therapy channel type thing here, right? So there's a transference of this energy onto the pivotal, i.e., the top, which is either, the focus, but, focus going up. So there's all these viewpoints, and then at the up, the matriarch. And so the matriarch sort of keeps this sort of domination or dominion. They are the rulers, they are the task leaders, they, are the marching orders, Sometimes this can be viewed very harsh if it's from a female. But a female psychopath is someone who is operating without a conscience and without empathy, and is all about them being at the pinnacle center. The pinnacle center, meaning no matter what it takes, they have to be at the win. No matter who they lie to, no matter whose knees that they buckle, no matter what they have to say to get what they want, no matter how they appear and then reappear and disappear and then represent over somewhere else to get what they want. So oftentimes there's no coherence, there's no alignment, between a value of their one persona with another. So oftentimes very disparaging or discordant qualities. So when you see this, and it can be very, very, I would say, terrorizing and horrific for people to see someone sort of metamorphosize into these very different sort of high-functioning sort of personas. But the power vacuum, I would say, is an energy that they exude out, that they assume unquestioning compliance. They assume unquestioning compliance. So, meaning not up for discussion, but it's a very much a one-directional, I rule all. And then the problem, though, is that this becomes very drastic for many people. Drastic meaning that they can't sort of be in the same energetic field with this individual. In other words, they become very exclusive, meaning unfairly shutting out others who have an opinion or a presence, just a being. It's hard to explain, but there's just either a stalwart, there's a stalemate where there's either no communication, despite all your supportiveness, your being there, etc. All of a sudden, it's just a non-acknowledgement. This is how they manipulate. And then if you're not, excuse me, If you're not, then, excuse me, I always get hay fever at this time of year. If you are then not sort of in that sort of, mode, if you will, that they just, it's like a black and white. There's no sort of, combining of a spectrum of people. It's sort of a very hyper righteousness, if you will, but their energy exudes this even without their speaking. So there's an energetic field. You have to understand that thoughts are things, and that we are all electrical beings, and that one's positive thoughts put out a certain electricity, and one's negative thoughts put out another type of electricity. One's manipulative thoughts put out an electricity, and one's compassionate thoughts put out an electricity. So this is known as the energetic field, around people. And this is something you can pick up and tune into, otherwise known as empathy. Otherwise is, I feel you, I get you, I'm with you, I understand where you're coming from, like I'm there. You're completely, you understand, you're really getting really strong accuracy with connecting with someone's feelings. This is a skill. This is something that should improve with you with time. But, when you're talking about a female psychopath, they do not possess this ability, but they can mimic it. So oftentimes they'll want to appear as if, but they are really not. I mean, oftentimes their personality could not be further from the truth, So there's oftentimes this transference of energy, and oftentimes from a conglomerate of people's backgrounds. In other words, when they are manipulating people, they might sort of take the sort of two pivot points from the authorities or the role models or the mentors or the people that you look up to, or even your own accomplishments in your life, and then sort of harness those, if you will, to be used against you, so that you see where then the female psychopath is more important, more valuable, more worth paying attention to, more worth giving to, depleting your 401k for, paying their kids rent for, all the different things that, under the, a sundry guise of falling in love, people become, neurochemically, there goes my drum, but people become neurochemically just sort of really overloaded and very sort of toxic, oftentimes with the disparaging sort of thoughts and the different feelings and the emotions which are discordant in nature, which mean creating a lot of tension, or I liken it to, it's kind of like if you were to put a number of different chemicals in a test tube that are not supposed to be combined, i.e. attracted to what is not in your best interest. This becomes self-sabotage, so this is not, neurochemically, you start to get very uncomfortably when you have these sort of mixed signals, these mixed messages going on. And, so neurochemically, it becomes very uncomfortable. It becomes very cloudy, very heavy. It can be, oftentimes, men aren't able to think through it. They're not able to rationalize a specific way, so they will then just sort of give in or give over the authority to the vacuum in, in the situation. Giving over, just yes, just giving up everything for them, because oftentimes the female psychopath will target and pin those people who have a vulnerability, a weakness, a need, which is glaringly apparent to them, but to the psychopath, but the other individual might not seem it's noticeable. You just went through a divorce. You haven't dated anyone in a while. Nobody seems to talk to you in the family or the outing or wherever it is. They pick up on sort of these low-hanging fruits, the cherries, so to speak, and they can see people's vulnerabilities. They can see right through things. So they become this sort of vacuous presence. just sort of, oftentimes all controlling, and it becomes a sort of a mental delusion where people they don't even have the ability to sort of stand on their feet and to think coherently in their presence. It seems like a big statement to say, but it's only because there is this big resistance that they install in others that, how dare you resist me? Otherwise I'll, that, you will no longer be A, B, and C, i.e., and then it's usually sort of communicated in very enigmatic or puzzling, mysterious ways that you won't be attractive, you'll never you'll never have the business. So there becomes this sort of manipulation and guise where if you're not there, then there must be something wrong with you. And so oftentimes they then fool a lot of people into it. They fool a lot of people into what becomes an addiction to this neurochemical high, which is a combination of neurochemicals oftentimes that should not be combined. So it's kind of like you're getting a shot or an injection when you're in this relationship, if you're either, with it or without it. So there becomes this very feeling like it's there or it's not. And usually when you're with most people, you will not have this true intensity. You will not have this discomfort. So it becomes a real issue then, because a lot of men that interpret the psychopathic gaze, which is very reptilian in nature. And once again, we're talking about the electricity, in people's bodies and that are from their thoughts. I mean, you can study this. Joe Rogan had a great interview with a neuroscientist that talked all about this. I will get the name of that individual for you. But I mean, it ties in and it's very fascinating. And we've talked about this before. Have you, felt it before when all of a sudden you get a cold chill and you just get this feeling? I mean, men and women. Some people say women have it more, tuned up or turned on or, honed over the years than men. But I think men get this too. So there becomes this sort of magnetic, which becomes sort of an unconscious compliance with this female that you have to or else. I mean, it's like an ultimatum. It's because your perspective is being annihilated. Your reasonable, rational thought is being annihilated. It's being erased. It's being made null and void. It's being made as if it makes no coherent sense and it's not received and processed. And then the person, the psychopath, the female psychopath with no conscience, does not worry. They don't feel regret, remorse, fear, worry about others. It's just not something they feel. It's just not going on there. It's just not something. They don't have the spectrum of feeling. It's either like rage or not rage. They have a very limited repertoire, but they mimic really because they're able to study and observe. So, you can then realize, this is the allure, the magnetic attraction, these sort of what people have termed psychic vampirism that can take place. It can be very intense. And so you have to be able to step away from and understand this power vacuum for what it is. Oftentimes, it's where you're not getting, you're just losing your footing. You're going to lose your I am. You're losing your clarity for fog, for fear, obligation, and guilt. So you're losing your I am for fear, obligation, and guilt, which becomes an addiction to this very high-powered sort of neurochemical combination of stress and attraction and loyalty and some degree of unconditional love, which just really becomes an addiction. And oftentimes it drives you, it's not good for you because it'll drive you further away than from what is well for you. You'll find yourself very unwell. You will find yourself very disgusted, perturbed, unhappy, wanting, feeling something is wrong, something is off. And, what's very important, I think, to healing is to realize that you really can't settle the score with this individual and to feel that you then, if you expose them and then want to settle the score, it's just a losing battle. To implicate them is to not get yourself anywhere. It's to continue yourself in your web, in their web. And the longer you stay in their web, the longer you stay in their web. And so you have to be willing to exit the web, really, and then of their manipulation, including those that fear, obligation, and guilt, and allowing that to run your life, running that who you are, how you feel, what you do, who you become, what you pursue, where you go, what decisions you make, how comfortable you make yourself in life. If you're always, staying in that vibe, in that lower level vibration, then you won't ever make strides in your life. You'll just feel always held down. You'll feel held back because you're still complying with the vindictive manipulation that oftentimes is there just to see you fall on your face and become ruined. I mean, that's just unfortunately the outcome of these individuals, rather than being uplifted, supported, getting out in the open, hearing people's viewpoints, being able to hear other people. This is not what they do. So people end up feeling very hurt if they are not, in that. So that then creates the new sort of power vacuum, if you will. So this is just a very cursory surface, discussion of this. I mean, there is so much more to talk about in this. So I think it's a great viewer question, and we can talk about it at more length if you desire. This is your buddy, Peace and Harmony, with you here today, and I hope that these videos do help. Please share, please subscribe, and for goodness sake, please donate for more great tools, videos, discussion, and support. Peace out, peace in, peace be with you, and have a beautiful day. Or rather, make it a beautiful evening.